Hi friends, how are you today? My name is Bailey Sarian, and today is Monday, which means it's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Monday. If you're new here, hi, my name is Bailey Sarian, and on Mondays I like to sit down and talk about a true crime story that's been heavy on my noggin, and I do my makeup at the same time. It keeps my hands busy and stuff, you know? If you're interested in true crime and you like makeup, I would say, hey, subscribe, because I'm here for you on Mondays. Before we get into today's episode, I do have a word from our sponsor, Factor. Cooking is one of those things that personally I feel like I don't have time for it. I don't really want to do it, honestly. Between work and life and more work and work, cooking is always like kind of low on my list. So, throughout the day, I would always kind of like randomly reach for like snacks and then wondering why I'm feeling like a zombie by 3 p.m. So then you drink coffee and you're like, now I'm anxious and feeling like a zombie. It's just a whole mess. But that's why I started using Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that sends fresh, not frozen, meals straight to your door. They're fully cooked, so all you have to do is pop them into the microwave and you've got a chef-crafted meal that fits your goals and your schedule. They've got over 80 meals on their menu every week, which is wild. There's 3 times more weekly meals than before, with double the protein options, double the seafood, and double the fun, and 30 plus global cuisine meals. Oh, oui. You want something light and Mediterranean one day? Yeah, maybe you do. And then maybe the next day you want something Asian inspired. Oh, listen here. Factor, they got you, okay? They got options. Ooh, right now my favorites are the like Mediterranean bowls. Anything with like the beef fillets or like roasted veggies, I'm all in. I'm all in, baby. So listen, if this sounds like your cup of tea, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code BaileySarian FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code BaileySarian FB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. A big thank you to Factor for partnering with me on today's episode and for viewers like you, because without you, I wouldn't be here right now, Yeah. So now let's get into today's episode. Listen, I chewed off my nails. I know. The last couple episodes, you guys were in the comment section. You guys were like, oh, your nails look so good. Your nails look so good. And I was so proud of them. And then I just couldn't take it anymore. And I chewed them all off. I'm so sad. They did look good. Okay, story today. Listen. Clara and David Harris. Now they looked like they had it all. The big Texas house, luxury cars in the driveway, the perfect children. Oh, a thriving dental practice, or should I say practices? And look, from the outside, they were living the American dream. But of course, listen, we're here, huh? Because behind that picture perfect family were secrets that would tear everything apart and end in one of the most shocking crimes of passion Texas had ever seen at the time, to be fair. This is the story of how the dream life of Clara and David Harris turned into a true nightmare. Now listen, the question here, it's not who did it. It's not one of those. The question was it out of rage, the crime that was committed? Was it out of rage in the heat of the moment? Or was it a cold, deliberate murder? That's still up for debate, honestly. I don't know. Here we go. If you're ever curious to know what I'm using, I'll list it in the description box down below. But let me tell you, Let me tell you. So Miss Clara Suarez, she was born on February 3rd, 1958 in Bogota, Colombia. Now her father, smart little cookie there, he was an electrical engineer. He was very ambitious, and he dreamed of like one day moving to the United States. And it was said that like he had a very big impression on Clara. Clara was said to be very intelligent and driven, just like her father. But sadly, when Clara was like 5 or 6 years old, her father passed away. So it left Clara's mother, who was a seamstress, to, take care of everything for the family. Again, Clara, driven, determined, everything. She ended up going to college and dental school in Colombia. And then after that, she ended up opening up her own dental office. So at 32 years old, she decided to follow through like on her father's dream and move to the United States. Now she had to get a college certificate in the States before she could practice dentistry there. So she attended college at the University of Texas. And I guess she would like pick up small jobs along the way to help pay her way through. But she did it. She was able to graduate and she was off. She found herself a position working at Castle Dental Center in Houston, Texas. So Clara, she's now 33 years old and she's working there, And I guess during this time she entered the Miss Columbia Houston beauty pageant. It was said she did it on a whim and she won. I mean, she was very good looking, but she won. Good for her. But it was while she was working at the Castle Dental Center. That's when she met 34-year-old David Harris, who was the orthodontist there. And I guess the two, they really hit it off and they started dating. At this time, David was divorced, but he had a daughter from his first marriage. Her name was Lindsay, and she was about 4 years old when David and Clara started dating. David's ex said that she divorced him because he was too focused on his career and he really just kind of neglected everything else. Now, many people at this time said, Clara and David were like a perfect match because they both shared like big dreams and ambitions and were just driven for more, And plus, they're total babes. That's fair to say. Because, he looked like a Ken doll for a minute. Kinda. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways. And they must have agreed because they dated for like less than a year and then they ended up getting married. Good for them. Not really though. It doesn't end well. So on Valentine's Day, 1992, they tied the knot and they celebrated at the Hilton Hotel, which was like across the street from NASA Mission Control at the Johnson Space Center. I know. When the spaceman says, astronaut Bailey says, Houston, we have a problem. Houston at this NASA center. I know this is dumb. I know, laugh at me, whatever. I truly thought Houston was someone's name. He was like, Houston, we have a problem. But he was talking to Houston, Texas Space Center. Anyways, the hotel that they celebrated at was across the street from like that. When it comes to space stuff, I need to be educated on my space knowledge. I lack NASA knowledge. Anyhow, my apologies. Moving on. So they're celebrating at this Hilton Hotel. Okay. Woo! So the two of them, again, successful, driven, ambitious. They ended up, Clara and David, they opened up their own separate practices. Now, their coworkers said that the two would talk on the phone at least 3 times a day. They were always in contact with each other. And every time they would end their calls, it would be like, I love you. You hang up first. No, you hang up first. I love you. To everybody else, it was just very cute. They were so in love. They just seemed like the perfect couple. So these two, they were quite the power couple. Clara, she bought her own practice called Lake Jackson Dental Care in 1993. And I guess, David would come by to the office every Monday and to help her out there. And then Clara, she actually helped David open up his own practice called Space Center Orthodontics a few months later. I guess after that, he went on to like purchase 7 more practices over the years. So they were making bank, okay? In 1998, the couple, they bought a mini mansion. I won't even say mini mansion because it was pretty big, but it was in like a very ritzy suburban city called Friendswood. And I guess it's right outside of Houston. David and Clara's specific neighborhood was the Estates of Polly Ranch, which sounds like, ooh. But their backyard was facing like the water, the creek. There's like a beautiful creek back there. So their backyard was like facing the water. And it was like, ooh. I looked up this neighborhood. Very fancy looking, very expensive looking, I mean, this neighborhood even has like a private airstrip. Like many of the people who live there, they had their own, they have their own private planes. Really what I'm getting at here is that the people who lived here had money, okay? The Harrises, now they didn't have a plane, but they did have a very large house, a 2-story, 6-bedroom, 5.5 bathroom home with premium finishes, a long dramatic driveway, a pool. It was just like all sitting on a piece of land that was just a little bigger than 3.5 acres. So they buy the house, and that same year, Clara, she gives birth to their twin boys, Brian and Bradley. Now, it was said Clara's like most prized possession. I mean, of course, she loved her kids and all that stuff too, but the thing that really made her feel like she made it in life was her silver S-Class Mercedes-Benz 430. I guess to her, again, this was just like, this is it. This is the dream. I've made it. The kids, the house, the husband, the car. I mean, it didn't stop there, though. They had dreams of one day opening up like a mega office in Clear Lake that would be like a one-stop shop for all of your dental needs. Now, while the Harrises were wrapped up in building their empire in this like little rich people area, there was still a lot of hot gossip going on and affairs going on. And everyone had something to say about everyone. The people love to gossip, don't they? You sure do. Especially rich people gossip. Come on. Now, there was so much scandal going on that a nearby private investigations business called Blue Moon Investigations was actually getting flooded with cases that were all connected to each other. Now listen, we're going to gossip for a little bit, but I promise it all circles back to the Harrises. So go with me on this journey. So a woman named Bobby Bacha, great name, Bobby Bacha, come on. She was the owner of Blue Moon Investigations. Now, she got a lot of business from wives who believed that their husbands were cheating on them. It was said that the Blue Moon Investigations business really catered to women. Like they had the scented candles. It was a bunch of women who worked there, and they knew their audience, their clients, I should say, So women would come in all the time and, my husband's cheating on me, at least I think they are, blah, blah. But there was this one rare case where 2 men showed up asking for their help. Their names were Chuck Knight and Steve Bridges. So they came because they wanted to find out if their wives were having an affair with each other. Scandal. These 2 couples, they were best friends. They went to church together. They lived near each other. They raised their kids together. But according to the husbands, their friends and neighbors started suggesting or whispering to them, your guys' wives' friendships, they seem a little bit too close. Are you sure they're not more than friends? People were kind of suggesting that. They were essentially alluding to the men that maybe their wives were scissor sisters. Now listen, this is southern like church area. So this is pretty scandalous. 2 women potentially scissoring. Oh my God, heads are exploding everywhere. So I guess it was said at first the husbands didn't believe them, like all these rumors and whatnot. But then the marriages like kind of started to go south. So they figured, maybe we should look into it. So that's when they asked Bobby, the private investigator, to follow their wives, Julie Knight and GAIL Bridges. Now, Julie was Chuck's wife. GAIL was Steve's wife. There was going to be like this one evening where the 2 women were going to go to the mall together to go shop, while their husbands stayed back and watched the kids. So they're telling the private investigator, like, hey, follow them when they go on this so-called shopping trip together and see if you find anything. According to Bobby's notes, Chuck said, quote, "But I bet they will go to a hotel, or they might just pull over on the side of a highway to do their business. GAIL has a boob job, and my wife will not be able to wait to touch those puppies," end quote. All right, Side note, later on, Chuck swore he did not use the word puppies. He said everything else, but he said, "I didn't say puppies." Just a little funny side note, but okay. But that's it. Okay, you get it. Bobby, she took the case and she followed Julie and GAIL. She followed them to the mall. She then followed them to McDonald's. They went through the drive-thru. She followed them, okay. And then she followed them back home. Now the PI, she did not see anything that looked romantic at all. So Bobby ends up going back to the husbands to let them know, like, I didn't find anything, And Chuck apparently asked her to, quote, unquote, inflame, aka exaggerate her findings just a little bit, and say that the 2 got really close in the car and like did something spicy. He's like, just say you saw that. Now Bobby, she's like, no, I am not going to do that. And she told them, like, even if 2 women kiss or hug, it doesn't mean that they're sexually active with one another. Freaking bozo. So after that, case closed. They're not lovers. They're just friends. Jeez. Listen, in Texas, if you are getting a divorce, and let's say it's considered your fault, like you're cheating, they're pretty strict there. You automatically become at risk to lose more or even everything in the settlement. So I think it's safe to say, low key, I think these guys just wanted a reason to get out of the marriages and like not lose their money, the houses and everything. So 6 months later, in July of 1999, guess who showed up at Bobby's office? Oh, it was none other than Julie Knight and GAIL Bridges, the wives of Chuck and Steve. Julie and GAIL told Bobby that they both wanted to file for a divorce from their husbands because these assholes were blackmailing them and threatening to expose them as lesbians, which they were not. Julie, she had a strong feeling that Chuck was actually the one hiding something. So, they wanted both husbands to be followed just to kind of see what they could dig up. But I guess at the last minute, GAIL, she backed out. She didn't want Steve followed. I don't know why, but it's okay. She let it go. So Bobby, the PI, again, she took on the case. Now, she didn't even mention anything to them about their husbands previously hiring her to follow them. A true professional, I will say that. So Bobby followed Chuck around town, as she does. And plot twist, discovered him meeting up with another woman. Yeah. Chuck was a cheater all along. Of course he was. When someone is making wild accusations about someone being a cheater, like out of nowhere or whatever, it's usually that person who's making the accusation. Usually they're the cheaters. Listen, Chuck was cheating on his wife with a married woman named Lori Wells. Now, Miss Lori over here was close friends with Chuck and Steve's wives. Like, they were all friends. The whole thing is just so messy. Same thing, like, they all hung out together. They went to church together. They went to Lamaze classes together. Jeez Louise, they were a close bunch. Now, all three couples, the Knights, the Bridges, and the Wells, they were all moving forward with the divorces, and it got messy. At one point, Julie and GAIL had accused Chuck and Steve of recording their phone calls and then editing the calls to make it sound like they were talking about something sexual. Again, just really trying to push this lesbian narrative, just doing the most. I mean, they got caught, and both Chuck and Steve, they got indicted on felony wiretapping charges for this. Now, Steve, his case was dropped pretty quickly, but Chuck's case remained active for years before it was eventually dismissed. But by the end of 2001, all three couples, their divorces were finalized. So after GAIL Bridges split from Steve, she and her two youngest kids, they ended up, moving into like a smaller home in town. And she was able to get a job working at Space Center Orthodontics, David Harris's main office. See, I told you we would get back to the Harrises. 38-year-old GAIL Bridges was hired as a receptionist at David's office. And, the two really hit it off. She wasn't bad to look at. She was attentive. She would go to lunch with David and was always available for his needs. It was said he would visit her desk between appointments, and some people in office noticed that they were just kind of openly flirting with one another. It just appeared that way, at least. But then in February of 2002, the relationship, it evolved into a full-blown affair. When you work at an office, you worked at an office, right? Have you? No? Yes? When you work at a place, and you can tell when something's going on between two people. So it didn't take long for other employees, to catch on that the two were bugging. David would, he would still go to Clara's office once a week, and Clara would come to his office occasionally. So it was to the employees, it was this pretty bold of him, Just an asshole move, huh? This woman named Diana Sherrill, she worked at both offices as the office manager. She said she was very offended by the affair because, first of all, she considered Clara a friend, but also she couldn't believe that GAIL was just fine, flaunting the affair in front of the other employees. It was just completely disrespectful. Plus, Diana, she said that she was worried that David, he could lose everything, his dreams, his family, his life, his career, everything, all over this woman. David's now 16-year-old daughter, she's now 16 years old, Lindsay. She would come to Friendswood every summer to live with her dad and Clara. And while she was there, she would work at David's office. And I guess there was one day where she went to the office, she's working, whatever, and her dad had dropped a patient file on the floor. I don't think it was on purpose, but he dropped a file on the floor. And then GAIL, she got up and she walked over there and she bent over and she picked it up for him. In that really sexy way where the butt looks real nice. She's like, oh, let me get that for you. The bend and snap, yeah. So Lindsay, the daughter, sees this and is like, okay. And then the daughter, she overhears the office ladies making little comments amongst each other about just how raunchy that was. Can you believe she did that? Oh my God. So Lindsay, she's starting to put some pieces together. She's like, is something going on between my dad and his secretary? So I guess the affair at this point had been going on for 5 months. And Diana, the office manager, she had enough. She was like, I need to say something. So she pulled Clara aside and she told her, you need to pay attention to what's going on with David and protect your marriage. Clara straight up asked her, is David having an affair? And Diana was like, Yeah, girl. Yeah. But you didn't hear from me, Now, Clara, she needed to know all the details. So she went to dinner with Diana to hear everything. She's like, tell me everything. But it was said that at the end of the night or after the dinner, Clara she was kind of in denial about it, Like, it can't be true. Could it? No. Going back and forth, back and forth. It was like during the drive home, Claire's going back and forth, like really thinking about it. And she wanted a second opinion on the situation. So she calls up David's mom, Millie. Now, they were all close, so it's not like it was out of the blue or anything. So she calls Millie up, and she's like, do you ever think David would cheat on me, And David's mom was like, oh, of course not. He would never. You're the love of his life. You're gorgeous. You're amazing. No. He would never do that. But even with that reassurance, I think deep down she knew something was up. Because when she got home, Clara went right to David, and she just asked him point blank, are you sleeping with GAIL? And David was like eating a burrito or something. He's like, no, don't be silly, and that was that. Not very convincing, David. Not very convincing. So, listen, it must have got to him, because the next morning, David decided to come clean. Kind of. He told Clara that he and GAIL, they actually had gone to lunch once, and he kissed her hand. He kissed her hand. Now let me ask you at home, would you believe that? Oh, you kissed her hand? What are you, a knight? Like, what is this? What are you doing? No one does that. No. Please. Anyway, so he kissed her hand. That's what he tells her. He was like, he was confessing, but not fully confessing. Clara knew like there was something there. She's like, oh shit. So she asked him straight up, she's like, do you love her? Do you love GAIL? And it was said that David said he wasn't sure. Hell no. All right. Okay. Claire's reaction was allegedly calm. I say allegedly because I can't imagine any of us being calm in that moment. But she said she was calm. She said she was like, fine. If you want to be with her, then I will file for divorce. Like, it was very matter of fact. Fine. I'll get a divorce. Fine. David, I guess, did not want that. He begged her to stay with him, saying that he would do anything to avoid a divorce. Again, I think going back to that whole like Texas situation, like if you get a divorce and you're caught cheating or whatever, you could lose everything. And it's like maybe he doesn't want to do all that. But that's just my wild guess here. I don't know. Maybe he did want to work it out. Either way, he begs her, please no, stay with me. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. Now, Lindsay, the daughter, she was like downstairs or something, like in the kitchen, and she overheard the conversation. So when Clara had like walked into the kitchen area, Lindsay tells Clara like, everyone in the office knows about the affair and people talk about it like all the time. At this point, Clara realizes that David, he was not telling her the whole truth. So she goes back upstairs and she confronts him. And I guess they're yelling at each other. It said that she slapped him and she just started yelling at him, saying that he needed to fire GAIL right away and that they needed to go to marriage counseling, like if this was going to work out. I'm sure that was said at some point, because she slaps him and then it said David like threw Clara to the floor. But it's just a whole situation, right? Now, Lindsay, the daughter, again, she heard all this commotion, right? So she goes running upstairs. She gets in the middle of it, starts yelling at her dad, like, why are you pushing Clara? And it's a whole thing. And it said at one point, David kind of is just like, fine, I'm leaving. You will never see me again. And it kind of stops everything, okay? It was very dramatic. So everything cools off for a whole 5 minutes. And then shortly after, they all piled into the same car and they drove to work together. So, family drama, you know? So once they get to the office, Clara, she went right up to the receptionist desk and she tells Gail, we need to talk outside. So Clara, she asked Gail one question. What kind of relationship do you have with my husband? And I guess it was said that Gail, she just like couldn't give a straight answer. I'm sure she was scared too, you know? But like she couldn't give a straight answer. So Clara demanded that Gail give her office keys. So Gail gives her the keys, and then Clara walks back into the office building, which like locked Gail out and basically like fired her. So later on, Clara called David's parents, Millie and Gerald, and she told them all about what happened. So his parents arranged for a dinner where all four of them could talk about the situation without like the kids around, you know? So that night they went to Millie and Gerald's house, they ate dinner, and they talked about how the couple should move forward, reach forgiveness, and suggested to David that he should talk to their pastor. During the dinner, David finally admitted to being intimate with Gail, like fully coming clean. And I guess, the family, they prayed over it, and that was it, I guess, But it was said that the night seemed to have ended like in a good place. It's unclear if anyone had asked him why he had the affair in the first place. Like point blank period, like, hey, why'd you do it, Some people later said that they think he started to resent Clara after she had the twins because she gave the children more attention than she gave to him, Clara believed, her theory was that he was going through a midlife crisis because all of a sudden he was working out more, he bought a new car, and now he's sleeping with his secretary. What is it? It's got to be a midlife crisis. So Clara, she actually told the daughter Lindsay her midlife crisis theory. She's like, yeah, I think your dad's going through a midlife crisis, blah, blah, blah. Just like telling her thoughts, So in Lindsay's free time, she went to like the bookstore and she was looking for self-help books for people going through a midlife crisis, but I guess she couldn't find one. So instead she bought 2 relationship books, in hopes to help David and Clara fix their marriage. One of the books she got was Relationship Rescue, a 7-step strategy for reconnecting with your partner by none other than Dr. Frickin' Phil, So Lindsay, she picks up these books and she leaves them out on like the kitchen counter in hopes that Clara and David would see them and read them. And honestly, at this point, I was like really feeling bad for Lindsay. They were involving her in the situation a little too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really shouldn't involve children, kids, into your adult matters, but especially Clara, she was like treating Lindsay like her best friend, telling her all the details. But it is what it is. Okay, so listen, the next morning, Clara, she wakes up, knowing everything. Her husband's having an affair, whatever. Now she has like a renewed sense of energy. She is determined to be better than GAIL. Operation Get Her Man Back was in full effect. So Miss Claire, she went out, she dyed her hair. She was like, I want to be blonde. So she goes blonde. She went out, she bought new lingerie. She booked a personal trainer. And she went to go see a plastic surgeon about getting a boob job because she knew that GAIL had gotten her boobs done. And, Clara, she was determined to one-up her. So she was like, I'm getting my boobs done, plus I'm going to get liposuction. So she puts down a deposit for boobs and liposuction. She meant business, okay? Honestly, I would have divorced him and then done all that and then been like, oh, look at me now, dick. But that's okay. So that evening, Clara and David decided to go out to dinner, just the 2 of them, to really just talk things out. So while they're at dinner, Clara asked David, she's like, so tell me, what do you like about GAIL? Which, is like kind of a trick question. It's like, you want to know, but at the same time, it's going to piss you the fuck off. But she's like, what do you like about GAIL, And he was honest, a little too honest. David gave Clara a detailed pros and cons list about GAIL and herself. And as he rambled off his pros and cons about both women, Clara, she took notes on a napkin. When it came to GAIL, David said that he liked that GAIL was pretty and smart. She had no fat. She had the perfect body. She had big boobs. She always believed in him. She was good with money. And when it came to sex, it was like his fantasies had come true. His cons list about GAIL was that he didn't like her hands and feet. He thought they were kind of masculine. And those were his cons about GAIL. Like, okay. So then it was Clara's turn. She's like, okay, what are my pros and cons? And David was like, well, I like that you're pretty and smart and you have better hands and feet than GAIL. And that was it. It was like his cons list, the things he didn't like about Clara, was a lot longer, okay? He had this long list. He straight up tells Clara, he's like, I don't like how you don't let me do the things that I want to do. I don't like how you interrupt me all the time. I don't like that you plan everything. I think you're a poor communicator, pessimistic, and you spent too lavishly. Oh, and she interrupted him all the time. He didn't like that either. She's writing this down like, oh, okay. He then went on to say, because he wasn't done, he also said that she was fat, a large person, too big, and that their bodies didn't fit well together during sex. Excuse me? Now listen, if this were me, I know. If this were you, I don't know what, I would flip the table. I would absolutely, like, why am I trying to make this work with you, you asshole? I would, when I was reading that, I was like, why, if that were me, I would start going back and start listing all the things I didn't like about his dumb ass. I'd be like, oh, really? That's interesting because your dick is lacking girth. Your hairline, disappearing. You have bad breath in the morning. You have no personality. You suck. I don't know, just your feet, toes, ew, ugly. Like he's Mr. Perfect. Like he's the prize to be won. Anyways, but she took these notes and it's just, yeah. He could have held back. He really didn't have to say all that. And if you see a picture of Clara, what are you talking about? She's not even fat. What are you talking about? The next day, Clara announced at work that she would be stepping back, to focus on low-key her makeover, but also her marriage and family. She was gonna take a moment, After that, David told Clara that he wanted to talk to GAIL and tell her that the relationship was over. It's done. Clara said that she understood, and she would be comfortable with him calling her, but David insisted that this needed to happen in person. So Clara told him to set up a dinner or lunch and that she would drive him to the restaurant. She would sit outside. She would watch the conversation and wait for him to get the closure he needed. But she wanted to go with. So David calls GAIL, and of course Clara's there listening in, and he planned to meet up with her and have dinner on Wednesday night. Now, when Lindsay, the daughter, found out about this, she insisted on going with Clara, to sit and watch the conversation too. But again, this was too much. This did not sit right with David, and he decided that no one should come. Okay, actually, no one's coming. And I'm just going to do it alone. Well, the week is going by, and Clara is all up in her thoughts, thinking about shit. She's coming up with some wild conclusions, as sometimes we do, And she remembered hearing rumors around town that GAIL was a lesbian. So, Clara's like, oh my God. What if GAIL was actually seducing David for his money so she and her girlfriend could live a lavish lifestyle together? She's like, yeah, that's probably what it is. It's gotta be that. Now she wants to tell this to David, but she's like, I need proof in order for him to believe that she's a lesbian and Yeah, I need proof. So she goes to none other than Blue Moon Investigations. Honestly, if this man were a prize at the end of a race, I would walk backwards. I don't know why everyone wanted him so much. So Clara calls them up and she fills them in on all of the drama. And Clara asked for them to start by listening in on David and Gail's breakup conversation that would be happening on Wednesday night. Which actually makes me think like maybe she didn't think she was a lesbian, because if she thought she were a lesbian, wouldn't she want the investigators to follow Gail first? Whatever. Anyways, so Blue Moon Investigations, they take on the case. So now it's Wednesday evening and it's time for David to meet up with Gail. Now, he was supposed to be going straight from the office to the restaurant to meet with Gail, okay? So Clara, she calls up like one of the ladies who works in the office, and she asked her to essentially like follow David to see if he was indeed going to the restaurant. I know, it's like, yes, she hired the private investigator to like follow them and whatnot, but like Clara just did not seem to be very patient in this moment, and she wanted extra eyes on the situation. So the friend ends up following David and then ends up calling Clara, okay? Cell phone, remember, cell phones. So she calls Clara and she's like, yeah, he's actually driving towards Gail's house. He's not going to the restaurant. So Clara is like, oh, hell no. What's the address? What's the address? Give it to me. And the friend gives her the address. Now this lit a fire in Clara's ass, okay? And she was like, you know, I'm gonna drive my ass over there. I'm gonna confront them. Now, according to a later interview Clara gave, she said, you know, she gets off the phone, whatever. She chugged a bottle of wine. She grabbed her car keys and was heading out to the car. Lindsay, the daughter, my assumption here was that she's like kind of witnessing what's going on, because Lindsay decides to join her. So I'm assuming she was involved in the know of the conversation. But Lindsay joins her, and she's the one who actually decides to drive Clara's Mercedes. So the two of them are driving, and they're like on this wild goose chase looking for like, where the hell is David and Gail, you know, driving around. First, they went to Gail's house, but they noticed, you know, David's car, he wasn't there. So then they drove to the restaurant where they were supposed to meet. They weren't there either. So then they drove to like another restaurant that maybe they were at. No sign of them at that restaurant either. Now at this point it was said that Clara was becoming more and more irritated and flustered, not knowing where they were. So she gets on her phone and she calls Blue Moon Investigations. And she's calling asking like, where's David? And the operator said, listen, it's not our job to give a play-by-play report on whatever job it is we're performing, for fear that the client might react poorly or impulsive on like whatever is being found. So that's what they tell her on the phone. But Clara isn't taking no for an answer. So she ends up asking for the cell phone number of the specific private investigator who was on the case. And they gave it to her. They went against their own rules and they gave her the phone number. So Clara calls this person up, this specific private investigator, and she's like, you know, where are they? Whatever. And the lady says, like, you know, you need to be patient. We're at a hotel. Now, when Clara hears this word hotel, boop, little light bulb goes off. She's like, I know exactly where the fuck they are. I know where exactly they are. We're going. David and Gail, they were at the Hilton Hotel. It was the Hilton Hotel where David and Clara celebrated their wedding. Yeah, same hotel. Asshole move, huh? So Lindsay drives them there. They go to the hotel. They pull into the parking lot. They see Gail's SUV. They know what she's driving. So Clara, she hops out of the car, busting up her car, punches out like the tail lights, keys the car, just doing all the things. She's doing the most, taking all the anger out. And I don't condone that, but that's fine. Just leave it at that. Just leave it at that, girl. You should have just gone. That was it. But they wanted more. Clara hops back into the Mercedes. Lindsay, they pull into a parking spot or whatever, and then they hop out and they head into the lobby. Clara and Lindsay, they go to the front desk, and Clara asks the front desk person, what's David Harris's room number? Or what's Gail Bridges' room number? The front desk person tells them, we don't have anyone under those names staying here. Later on, we find out that David paid in cash and told the front desk guy to not take his name down or anything, and they didn't. They never took his name down. Now, technically, legally, and all that stuff, not taking someone's name down is against Hilton policy. And later down the line, the front desk employee ended up getting fired and in trouble for all this. But yeah, they're not supposed to do that. But also, I feel if someone asks for a room number, they're also not supposed to tell you what room number it is, right? Isn't that a policy too? Doesn't matter either way. The front desk guy is there's no one here by that name, but they know that they're there. So Lindsay comes up with this master plan. She's oh, I'll get him to come out, to leave the hotel, So she texts her dad that her brother is really sick and he needs to rush home immediately. It's urgent. So she texts him, and then she calls him to make it sound extra urgent. David answers and is okay, I'm on my way home. I'm coming. So Clara and Lindsay, they're waiting in the lobby area, waiting for David to come down. But he's taking a little too long. Where is he? So now Clara calls his phone, saying the same thing. The boys are sick. You need to come home. You need to come, blah, blah, blah. And again, he says he's on his way. So they're waiting. And just when Clara and Lindsay, are about to leave the lobby and go outside and wait, the elevator doors open, and guess who comes walking out? It's David and Gail, and they are holding hands. When Clara sees this, she goes off. She starts screaming, "You bitch, he's my husband!" And she's launching herself at Gail. She's pulling at her hair. She's ripping her shirt. She's bah, 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 getting her good, slapping her. It was a lot. And then I guess at some point, kind of love it, not really, but kind of at some point, Clara makes an announcement to the hotel lobby, because they're in the lobby, right? And people are just watching. Clara's this right here, this is Dr. David Harris, and he's fucking this woman right here. It's a lot. If you were in that lobby, you'd be watching damn. Oh shit. So Clara, losing it. So, this whole thing's happening, right? Remember, Lindsay, the daughter, still there. She gets into the middle of it. She grabs her little purse, hitting David with it, her dad, hitting with the little purse. And she's I hate you. And it's a whole show, okay? Mind you, the hotel employees seem to have let it go on a little too long, but eventually they step in and they try to break up Clara and Gail, who are essentially playing tug of war over Gail's shirt. David steps in and he puts his hand on Clara's head and pushes her to the ground. Guys, when they got big hands, it's your fucking whole head and just pushes you down. I guess while she's down, David and the front desk clerk, they usher Gail out of the back of the hotel to her car. And then other employees, they guide Clara and Lindsay out the front of the hotel. So it's everyone, take a deep breath here, okay? It should have ended there, okay? but it didn't. When Clara and Lindsay get back to the car, Clara hops into the driver's seat and Lindsay is in the passenger seat. Clara said, according to her, at this point she blacked out, as they always do, huh? They blacked out. But all she remembers was that she did not want to let GAIL leave the parking lot with her husband. She remembered thinking, like, I need to stop that car. I need to stop that car. But she also said that she blacked out, but she seemed to remember this. So, okay, girl. So then she was like, I need to stop that car. So she sped through the parking lot and like to see where GAIL's car had been parked to find the two of them. So Clara, she spots David helping GAIL into her car, and that's when Clara like guns it towards GAIL's vehicle. I guess David pushes GAIL into the SUV, and apparently he tries to stop Clara by putting his hands like out on the hood of the Mercedes. I think it's just also instincts, like to put your hands out, you know? But at that point, it was too late. Like, she was gunning it. So David gets hit by the car. He flies freaking 25 feet across the parking lot. Yeah. Lindsay, daughter, witnesses all this, poor thing, screaming, okay? And she's trying to, like, get out of the car. But Clara, she guns it again. This time she runs over David, okay, because he went flying. So she runs him over. Then she turns around and she runs him over again. And then she does another 180 and runs him over a third time before stopping the car. Now, Lindsay, the daughter, obviously deeply upset. She's hysterical. She's screaming. Oh my gosh, you know, she gets out of the car and she like runs over to Clara's, the driver's seat, you know, and she like pops her in the face. And then I guess she like falls to the ground and is just screaming and sobbing. It was said, according to Clara, that when she got popped in the face by Lindsay, it's kind of when she like came back to and was in shock about what she had just done. So she gets out of the car and she runs to David. Other witnesses who were staying at the hotel, obviously they heard a lot of commotion, screaming, crying, yelling. It was all coming from the parking lot. They heard someone yelling like, he's been hit. So some eyewitnesses like ran out to the parking lot and saw that there was a man on the ground and a woman over him, you know, and it was Clara. And the woman was holding him saying, David, look what you made me do, and was like aggressively shaking him. The witness said that she got between Clara and David and like tried to get Clara away from him and was telling her to back off because like if someone is in that type of condition, like you should not be moving them, you're shaking them aggressively. You can make things worse, you know? So the witness said she was trying to get her away from him. The witness also noticed that David's injuries were bad. Like, it was said like the side of his head was completely scraped off, essentially. And like his teeth had come out. Oh, it was awful. And then they said that Lindsay, the daughter, came over yelling and screaming and like hysterical, obviously, and was just yelling like, that's my daddy, that's my dad. Tragic scene. Where was GAIL during all this? I didn't even actually think about that. She might have taken off at this point. I'm not sure. But David, he was clinging to life at this point. So the police arrived on the scene and David was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Clara was arrested on site. Now, I don't know about you, but I was like, where the hell was Blue Moon Investigations and all this? Like, weren't they supposed to be there watching, you know? Like, why didn't they see Clara and Lindsay kind of pop up at the hotel and, like, stop them? Well, the private investigator said that, you know, I guess that night she had invited a friend to join her because it was clear that David would be gone for a while. And she was just kind of, like, watching his car to see when he would leave. So she's like, just come with me. We can, like, you know, hang out and, like, sit and chat. So that her and her friend were just chit-chatting, watching David's car. And I guess they just completely missed Clara and Lindsay showing up to the hotel. But when they heard like tires screeching, and they saw Clara driving like a mad woman, the private investigators started videotaping. Yeah, we have the video, but it's nighttime and it's dark and she's filming from kind of far away. So she's zooming in. Footage is grainy, but it starts right after David is hit for the first time. I mean, it was clear who had done it. It was Clara, and she was charged with murder and was out on a $30,000 bond the next day. Now, Clara had claimed that the whole thing was an accident, that she only hit David once, even though there were multiple witnesses said that it was 3 times. They saw her do it 3 times. So Miss Clara, she hired a well-known lawyer. His name was George Parnham, who had just been in the public eye the year before. Because guess who he defended? Andrea Yates. You remember? Andrea was the mother in Texas who had drowned her 5 kids. Yeah, during an episode of postpartum depression in 2001. And George, he defended her, So George, his defense, his plan was to prove that Clara basically blacked out with rage or sudden passion and had no clue as to what she was doing. So Clara, she pled not guilty to the murder of her husband. So her trial started on January 21st, 2003 in a Harris County courtroom. David's parents, Millie and Gerald, they showed up to the trial in support of Clara. They really liked her. They really believed it was just like a tragic accident, and she was still the daughter-in-law they knew and loved. Lindsay, the daughter, she immediately turned against Clara, as she should. I mean, it was hard for her because Clara was like the mother figure she had kind of been supporting throughout this whole affair. But now to Lindsay, Clara was her enemy, which I'm sure we all can agree, completely understandable. Remember they had twin boys? Well, the boys, they were now 4 years old, and they were in the temporary custody of their grandparents. Now, for this case, it was a little tough to select jury members because many people felt like they understood where Clara was coming from and that David got what he deserved. I know, it's a very Chicago vibe. If you had been there, if you had seen it, I bet you would have done the same, So they had a tough time finding jury members who maybe didn't feel that way. But eventually, after jury selection, the trial itself, it lasted about 3 weeks. The prosecution relied on the evidence, the videotape of Clara running over David 3 times to argue that her goal was to kill him. But the defense argued that she was doing too many things, which was kind of showing she didn't want to kill him. Meaning she was stepping away from her job. She was getting a makeover. She was considering counseling to save her marriage. And these are actions that someone would not do if they were planning on murdering someone. So that's what they're saying. So the witnesses for the prosecution included Blue Moon Investigations, the owner, Bobby, the Hilton front desk clerk, and of course, Lindsay. I think the biggest shocker was that Lindsay said she heard Clara say, "I'm going to hit him," before running over David. Now, Lindsay herself, when she took the stand and all that, she seemed to be in terrible shape. She was very, very depressed, having nightmares, having thoughts of taking her own life, and especially after witnessing everything that happened. And again, I think we can all understand why she's feeling that way. It was said the trial itself was very emotional, that the judge had to call for several recesses so everyone, including Clara, could like pull themselves together. Let me get this lip liner on. Hold on. When it was the defense's turn, George, he brought in an expert. The expert's name was Steve Irwin. No, I'm not kidding. Same name, different guy. I know, funny, huh? But Steve Irwin, he reconstructed the crime scene to prove that David was only run over once, and the other bumps that are shown in the video were actually Clara like hitting the curb. He's like, yep. Based on the bloodstains and the tire marks at the scene, he believed that David's body was too far out of range for the car to have gone over him. So Steve Irwin created a video to like explain this, but the judge did not allow it to be shown in court. So instead, Steve, he brought in a whiteboard and like had some magnetic cars to kind of like illustrate his point. He's like, but it wasn't like as clear or very convincing. David's family and some of the women from the office testified in support of Clara. Everyone loved Clara. Oh my gosh, everyone loved Clara. They all talked about how sweet, honest, good-natured she was, how her relationship with David was like a match made in heaven. One employee even mentioned how devastated Clara was in those final days, saying Clara lost like a noticeable amount of weight from all the stress. Well, yeah, girl, you killed someone, so okay. But one person no one expected to show any support towards Clara was the mistress, GAIL. So GAIL testified, and when she got up there, she was like, yeah, David told me like he had an open marriage, and she said that she didn't blame Clara for being angry. She's like, yeah, I get it. Actually, I could see that. Yeah. During trial, Clara actually took the stand and shared all of the details about the 8 days that led up to David's death. Now, according to the media, her account of what happened really tugged at the heartstrings of the public. Most people felt like David put Clara through hell in the days leading up to his murder, and it seemed clear to them that Clara still loved David, that she'd done everything she could to make him happy, but he still chose the other woman. The closing arguments were given. Then the jury went to deliberate. And on February 13th, they found Clara Harris guilty of first-degree murder with a deadly weapon. Now, the jury was then sent back to deliberate on a sentencing recommendation and whether or not they believed this was an act of sudden passion. Listen, in Texas, sudden passion is when someone is overwhelmed with rage or fear and commits a crime out of that emotion. Like if you started your period and you're just raging and you're like, wah, wah, I guess that would be sudden passion. And if a jury believes that this is why the crime happened, the sentence would be much lighter. And in some cases, even taking like a first-degree murder charge and dropping it down to second-degree murder. In Clara's case, if it was considered sudden passion, it could take a potential life sentence that she was kind of facing and turn it into something like 20 years maximum sentence. I was looking into this. I was like, that's interesting. Sudden passion? Okay. And on February 14th, which would have been Clara and David's 11th wedding anniversary, the jury did find that this was a crime of sudden passion, and they recommended a lighter sentence. Because it was considered a crime of sudden passion, Clara was sentenced to the maximum penalty of 20 years, fined $10,000, and would not be up for parole until she served at least 10 years. I always thought for some reason Texas would be like the psycho ones and like lock them up forever, but I get okay. Clara tried to appeal her case on the grounds that not all of the evidence was presented, like the Steve Irwin video, but she was denied. After her sentencing, there were actually quite a few lawsuits that followed. Clara ended up suing her lawyer, George Parnham, for overcharging her and breaking attorney-client confidentiality because he was giving information to a true crime author who did not have Clara's permission to write a book about her. And so she was suing and all that. She ended up losing that case. David's daughter, Lindsay, she filed a wrongful death lawsuit on behalf of herself and her brothers right after their dad died, with the goal of stopping Clara from having access to David's estate and using the money for her legal fees, which is like good for her. That's a good catch. Lindsay won her case. And, the estate was like split evenly between all the kids. Millie and Gerald, David's parents, were promised permanent custody of their grandsons. But after sentencing, they stopped taking Clara's calls and would not bring the boys to visit her in prison. And Clara was kind of bitter about this. So when the temporary custody agreement ran out, Clara fought to have the boys live with her former neighbors. Which sounds super random, but I guess they were really close with these neighbors. And the neighbors were actually named in Clara and David's will. If anything were to happen to them, these neighbors would raise the kids. Clara and the neighbors won this case, and the boys went to live with the neighbor friends full time. Millie and Gerald, they were granted visitation rights. I don't know how they felt about it. I think they were upset. I'm not sure, but yeah. After the custody battle, Millie and Gerald filed their own wrongful death lawsuit against Clara, claiming that David had promised to take care of them in their golden years, and they just wanted their part of the estate. They ended up winning. They settled for a lesser amount, but they ended up being awarded a lot of money. And then in the final lawsuit, Lindsay, the twins, Millie, and Gerald filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Hilton, the hotel, and Blue Moon Investigations. The lawsuit stated that hotel management failed to provide effective security or notify police in time to prevent David's death. And then as far as Blue Moon Investigations, they should not have told Clara that the two were at the hotel, and they should have followed their own freaking policy in the first place, right? Yes. Both companies settled and the amount was undisclosed, but they did it. Good for them. Listen, in 2018, Clara was released on parole after serving 15 years, and as of 2023, she has completed her sentence, making her a completely free woman. Due to her conviction, she did lose her dental license, but while she was in prison, she worked in a program that translated text to Braille for adaptive textbooks. And I guess she did so well in this program that she got a full-time editor position. So next time you're reading Braille, you can think of Clara. She probably did that shit. Part of Clara's parole condition was to not contact Lindsay. And according to Clara, it remains that way. Lindsay stayed out of the public eye, and she focused on healing and moving forward and getting the fuck away from this. The twins, the two boys, they were 4 when it happened, but they are now 27 years old, and it's said that they have a great relationship with their mother. Apparently, they have forgiven her, and they spend a lot of time with her out on their boat. I'm like, okay. Millie and Gerald, David's parents, they passed away in 2017 before Clara was released. As for GAIL, she hasn't been in the spotlight since the trial. I read an interview where she gave it shortly after the trial, where she said she was dealing with severe PTSD and depression, and she was going through therapy, and she just wanted to lay low, move forward. And I think she did just that, because you can't find her anywhere, and good for her, because what a mess. Damn. Listen, at the end of the day, this is truly sad, tragic story with a freaking loss that could have very simply been avoided. Yeah. If you go online and like look up Clara Harris and all that stuff, there's a lot of people that praise her. They think she's amazing. Like, yeah, good for her. And I get both. But it's like, he still killed someone, But a lot of people, they praise Clara, or at the very least, they have sympathy for what she did. Some people feel like he had it coming. But Clara had even said, again in a later interview, that she isn't proud of what happened and no one should be cheering on her behavior. Let me tell you, you want to hear my thoughts? My thoughts are this. A couple things. I personally don't think Clara was in a blackout rage. That narrative seemed to kind of appear when she hired that attorney guy. And same with her, like, downing a bottle of wine before she left that night. I'm skeptical about that because, listen, when the police show up and whatnot, if you drink a bottle of wine, you're going to reek of wine, and it would be noted in police notes that, like, she reeks of alcohol. And there was no mention of alcohol at all. I just feel like the whole blackout rage was kind of part of her team's strategy. I'm all for like keying the car, slashing the tires, beating them up, whatever, but not murder. What Clara should have done was gotten a divorce, took everything from this man, got the lipo, got the boobs, and been like, yep, I win. Like, that's the true win here. Killing the guy is not the win. No, the win is looking hot as hell and taking everything from them. Should have done that, girl. Should have done that. Should have done that, but that's okay. Instead, she ruined her life. She ruined her stepdaughter's life. She ruined GAIL's life. She affected a lot of people here because of her decision and actions. But I think a lot of us can understand. No, I don't know. I know a lot of people in the comments are going to be like, good for her. You guys are going to drive me nuts. And then, okay, so when I was learning about this whole situation and I learned about sudden passion, and I was like, that's such an interesting thing. I didn't know. I've never heard of this whole sudden passion situation. And I was like, is that mainly like something that they give to women? Like, has there been any cases where like the situation was reversed? Just out of my own curiosity, like, and this is where it kind of got spooky to me. I was like, see, the sudden passion thing could be potentially a very scary thing, because listen, there was this man, Texas, okay, listen. His name was Kerry Birmingham. He shot and killed his wife, and he didn't like just shoot her like once. He shot her like 3 times while she was filming it, and it was considered an act of like sudden passion, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of spooky. I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to say it. Because it's like, if you're going to kill your spouse, it's like, shit, go to Texas, I guess. Can I say that? I just did, because I don't like that. That I did not like. I did not like that. I don't know about the sudden passion thing. To me, sudden passion is like, I was angry. I always think of my period, because sometimes I get a lot of sudden passion when I'm PMSing. And I'm like, I was angry, so I drove through a grocery store because I was just fucking pissed off. And I just wanted to get some donuts. Like, to me, that's sudden passion. I just, fuck it. Just let me drive through this grocery store so I don't have to get out of my car. I just drive through the grocery store, go to the aisle, and then get my stuff, and then get out. That's my version of sudden passion. Not shooting someone, running them off. Anyways, that, my friends, is the Clara Harris case. A murder, a death, an accident that could have 100% not happened, been prevented. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Let me know who you want me to talk about next time. Let me know your thoughts on this whole sudden passion situation. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Make good choices. Be safe out there. Please don't do anything crazy and blame it on sudden passion, okay? And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye.